On its surface, Mr. Robot follows the standard hero's journey. Our protagonist is special, only they have the power and the will to save the world. They are the moral centre of things, battling against those who would take this goal too far or those who refuse to take it at all. Whatever happens, great or small, positive or negative, it is the result of our hero's best efforts to make things right. Only, Elliot isn't just our protagonist, he's the antagonist too. At first it seems that E-Corp is the enemy, that men like Tyrell Wellick are to blame for the cruelty of the world. But Elliot, be he Mr. Robot or not, is fine to work with Tyrell toward a common goal. They're on the same side. After all, they're both victims of someone higher up the chain who they plan to take down, Philip Price. Except, he too is merely a pawn for someone even higher. Not only that, but the plan that Elliot sets in motion only happens because he lets it. Not because he wants it to happen, but because it's the easiest way to get what he wants.
It's not that I'm out of moves. It's that you're not worth one.
These grand designs that take up the entire world of Mr. Robot and his followers, they mean nothing to men like Philip Price. What Mr. Robot believed was his own vision was merely a move being played by those he thought he was working against. Yet, again, it's even worse than that. Worse than a noble idea perverted by the self-interest of a greedy egotist. It's that the consequences, the economic collapse of 5/9, everyone who'd been murdered, massacred or disgraced, served to those really in control no purpose at all. That is, of course, other than
pettiness. It was a dig at me. It's that small.
A zero-sum game is a mathematical representation of a situation in which every participant's gain or loss of utility is exactly balanced by the gains or losses of the others. Meaning that if, in the end, the total gains are added or the losses are subtracted, they will sum to 0. In the Season 1 episode Brave Traveller, Mr. Robot uses this expression in reference to the futility of Elliot's attempts to save Shayla from Vera's men by breaking Vera out of prison.
She was dead the minute she started working with that maniac.
Forget it. It's not happening.
This is a zero-sum game. Calculate all the outcomes. Either way, you all end up dead. It's the only way Vera wins. Zero-sum, Elliot. There is no plan where both you and Shayla survive.
It's advice that Elliot dismisses, only to learn, just as Mr. Robot had said, that Shayla had been dead long before he'd even begun. His attempts to get her back, to save her, they're all for naught. While I write this, Season 4 of Mr. Robot is still airing, and I've just finished rewatching Season 3, ready to binge the finale. I'm not here to talk about those latest developments, but what I want to do is frame how dire, how dark, and how miserable Season 3 became, and how it makes the series so very unique and compelling. While Elliot attempts to prevent the bombing of a single E-Corp building, he's told again by a false vision of Mr. Robot that what he's attempting is a zero-sum game. Perhaps this is merely a manifestation of his own self-doubt, or some kind of flashback to that similar desperate situation from before. But regardless, it's once again proven right. Much as with Shayla, with 5/9, Elliot's attempts to protect those around him result in death. Countless deaths in this case. For some perspective, the very real September 11th attacks resulted in just under 3,000 casualties. The so-called cyber bombings in Mr. Robot kill upwards of 4,000.
I think the total will be over 4,000. But the number doesn't really matter now. Even if there's more.
Later that same day, Elliot has to learn that 2 of his friends have been murdered, people who were only involved at all because of him, and not only that, but they will be remembered with disdain and infamy, while those truly responsible get away.
He got what he wanted, didn't he? Except, wait a minute, nope. E-Corp's still gonna be just fine, because of E-Coin. He sure didn't see that coming, did he? Whoops! Oh well. Consolation prize. At least we get to be miraculously off the hook for everything. Yes, sure, a couple of good people had to die in disgrace for that. But who's counting at this point, am I right?
It's no surprise then that Elliot would want himself dead. Something that's only stopped by Trenton, the hacker name of Elliot's disgraced friend Sharma Biswas and the birthplace of her little brother Muhammad. The episode Don't Delete Me, aside from simply being a masterpiece of television, is a great example of how Mr. Robot serves as an allegory for the current despair of modern political and global situations. With late-stage capitalism crushing the spirits of young people, an oversaturation of commercialism and soulless media leaving many to feel alienated and depressed, and with those in power seemingly content to leave the world worse than when they started. To dismiss real threats such as climate change in place of pointing fingers for distractions or for their own profit. In this sense, having White Rose pin everything on the Islamic State through Trenton perfectly reflects the disregard one can have for consequences when they sit too high above us to suffer them. The comments made by Trenton's father,
"This country now blames Muslims for everything. There's no room for us here anymore,"
mirror the sentiment that President Donald Trump will begin putting forward about Muslims later in the Mr. Robot timeline. Of course, though, they'd already been a common occurrence by the time this episode aired. It's difficult to plan television with this level of production time to remain intensely relevant to the news of the day when it's released. Therefore, I think Sam Esmail deserves infinite praise for his ability to do just that. In truth, I'd wanted to get this video out quite a few weeks ago, but having it come out now, just after the interesting British election, I can't help but feel it's only more appropriate. Because it's in a mosque, and in Muhammad, that Elliot decides he wants to live. An American child born in New Jersey who dreams of becoming president and is having to leave his home because of the cruelty and indifference of those more spoiled than he. The detail of his birthplace being so close to Elliot's and the reveal of the meaning behind Trenton's chosen alias adds an incredible emotional weight to this relationship. Darlene is childish, Romero was skeptical with a background of jail time, and Mobley too had his own selfish reasons for participating in F Society. It's namely Trenton then, who was a true believer in this idea of making the world a better place, for her family, for her little brother, and for those like them who are in need financially and socially of some vague form of justice. Her motivations were pure, her morals in check. In a way, she is everything Elliot wishes he could be, and Mr. Robot seems to think he is. Someone who, for no personal gain, sought to improve the world around her.
Have you ever considered which part of our scheme motivates you? When the Dark Army bailed, you didn't care if pushing a button would bring an economic revolution. You want momentary anarchy. Mobley likes palling around. Romero wants a whiff of fame. Those reasons depress me.
What sport you want?
My parents were born in Iran. They came here like everybody else, for freedom, but my dad works 60-hour weeks to determine tax loopholes for a millionaire art dealer. My mom, she ran up loans into 5 digits to get an online degree. They won't shut up about how great America is. But they're gonna die in debt, doing things they never wanted to do.
Later in the episode, it's in an email from Trenton that Elliot finds his new purpose, the light at the end of a bleak and desolate tunnel. If it weren't for this hope, Mr. Robot as a show would become unbearably grim. However, it doesn't detract from the season's overall darkness. The 4,000 dead civilians, the almost childish purpose of it, the dismantling of Dominic DiPiero's morals, convictions, and beliefs in aid of a selfish, delusional mass-murdering tyrant, the manipulation and suffering of Angela Moss, the meaningless husk of a life that even a character as unsympathetic as Tyrell Wellick finds himself occupying. And what, for me, is the darkest scene in the entire show, something that not undoing 5'9", not taking down White Rose, not anything can make less depressing. When Irving shows Mr. Robot the results of his struggles.
Your revolution is only allowed to happen because it was bought and paid for by people like them. Face it, no matter how hard you try, it's always the end result.
It's these people, the same faceless, laughing people we were introduced to at the very start of Season 1, who are the true evil behind Mr. Robot. White Rose is no doubt the main antagonist of the series, the big bad if you will, but she merely represents a concept too large to personify. It may be a political statement, that the dreams and desires of the working public mean nothing to those so rich and so powerful that reality becomes an illusion. Or a more general statement about human nature, that the top 1% of the top 1% are only the voices in our heads, the things we do when no one is around and when no one can hold us accountable. When you are above the law, above morality, there's no end to the suffering you can cause for your own gain. Or aren't those the same thing? Season 3 of Mr. Robot is all the issues we see around us today turned up to 11. It's exaggerated and a little on the nose, but its message is meant to be heard loud and clear. It's not a specific one, much as E-Corp doesn't represent any one corporation, serving more as an amalgamation of many. The purpose of Mr. Robot, I think, is only to express that something is wrong. That we all know something is wrong with this world, with its people. That someday soon, something has to change or we will collapse. But we're not really sure what it is, or how to do it. Maybe if there was a winning move, we'd have found it by now. Or maybe the answer is simple, that it's impossible to fix our world because to do so would go against our very nature. Maybe it's just another zero-sum game. But much like Trenton, we can only try, however it may leave us in the end. What's certain is, it's a subject much too big for us, or for a video essay about a TV show. But I think it's worth thinking about.